The executioner raised his sword, and my wife smiled because she could hear me surrendering. I knelt beneath the white towers of Aurelis with iron around my wrists and rain sliding down my face. 10,000 citizens filled Crown Square. Half had come to watch a traitor die. The other half had come because Queen Seraphine had ordered every bell in the capital to announce my shame. She sat above them in silver mourning silk, beautiful enough to make cruelty look holy. A thin circlet rested against her dark hair. Its moonstone glowed whenever another person's thoughts entered her mind. Mine must have sounded wonderfully simple. I have lost. I am tired. Let it end. Her shoulders relaxed. Only I noticed. Cassian Rook, she called, her voice carrying over the rain. You conspired with the Ashen Court, murdered Chancellor Vey, and attempted to steal the throne. Do you confess? I lifted my head. I confess that you know exactly what I am thinking, the crowd murmured. Seraphine's smile deepened. Then think your final prayer. I did. Forgive me, Sarah. It was not a lie. That was the useful thing about her gift. Seraphine could hear the sentences people formed inside their heads, but forgiveness was a word with many doors. She heard the one I opened for her. She never noticed the one behind it. The executioner planted his boots. The sword began to fall. Across the square, a blind violinist drew her bow over one silent string. Every bell in Aurelis rang backward. The sound struck the moonstone crown. Cracks of violet light raced through it. Seraphine rose so quickly, her chair overturned, and for the first time in 2 lifetimes, I watched fear erase every royal expression from my wife's face. The sword stopped a finger above my neck. The executioner had not chosen mercy. Captain Mara Vale had caught the blade between her gauntlets. Soldiers in the Queen's colors turned their spears toward the royal platform. Palace windows opened. Thousands of paper ravens poured into the rain, each carrying a copy of Seraphine's secret orders in her own hand. The crowd's silence broke like glass. My wife stared at me, trying to force her gift through the broken crown. I let her hear one last sentence. This time, you lose knowing why. Her lips parted. This time? That was when she finally understood that the man kneeling below her was not the husband she had outplayed. He had died 7 years ago. I remembered that first death more clearly than I remembered our wedding. In my first life, the sword had not stopped. There had been no violin, no soldiers turning, no paper ravens. I had died believing Seraphine merely hated me. Only when cold steel touched my neck did her true confession enter my mind through the marriage bond. I never loved you, Cassian. I only needed a mind honest enough to hide behind. Then darkness took me. When I opened my eyes again, music was playing. Golden lanterns floated beneath the ballroom ceiling. Nobles circled beneath them in jeweled masks. My hand rested around Seraphine's waist, and her white wedding gown moved against my boots as we danced before the Emperor. 7 years before my execution. The night I married her. For 3 terrifying heartbeats, I could not breathe. I smelled orange blossoms in her hair. I felt the warm pressure of her fingers on my shoulder. I saw the tiny moonstone at her throat pulse pale blue. Her gift was already listening. If I thought she murdered me, the second life would end before the dance did. So, I looked into the eyes of the woman who would destroy my family, my name, and half the kingdom, and I thought the one thing I had believed on our wedding night the first time. She is the most beautiful woman in the room. Seraphine smiled. You are staring, husband. I have been told I am allowed tonight. Her laugh was soft, private, perfectly measured. In my first life, it had made me feel chosen. Now it sounded like a lock turning. She heard thoughts as words. I had learned that slowly during our marriage. After watching her answer questions, no one had spoken, and punished servants for insults they had swallowed. She could not hear dreams, images, reflexes, or memories until someone described them internally. She could not seize a thought that had no language. My reborn memories did not feel like sentences. They lived behind my eyes as lightning, blood, bells, and the sensation of a blade. I kept them there. Seraphine tilted her head. What are you afraid of? I gave her a true answer. Our first dance, your court, becoming a disappointing husband. All of it had frightened me once. Truth, I realized, could serve as camouflage better than any lie. Her thumb brushed the pulse in my neck. You could never disappoint me. I nearly laughed. Instead, I kissed her hand while the court applauded. At midnight, Emperor Aldrin presented us with 3 wedding gifts. Seraphine received the Moon Garden estate. I received command of the 7th Banner, a ceremonial regiment everyone considered useless. Together, we received a sealed black chest, supposedly left by Seraphine's dead mother. In my first life, Seraphine had opened that chest in private. 3 months later, the Emperor's eldest son died of a mysterious fever. 6 months after that, a network called the Ashen Court began buying judges, generals, and grain merchants. 7 years later, Seraphine placed its crimes on my shoulders. This time, when the Emperor offered her the key, I stepped forward. A wedding gift belongs to both spouses, I said lightly. Let us open it before our witnesses. Seraphine went still. The change lasted less than a blink, but I knew every expression she had worn at my trial. I recognized panic when it crossed her face. Her gift pressed against my thoughts. I shaped a harmless sentence. I hope it contains embarrassing childhood letters. The Emperor laughed. Open it then. Seraphine's fingers tightened around the key. My mother valued privacy. And tradition values witnesses, said Prince Oren, the Emperor's eldest son. He was alive. The sight of him struck me harder than returning to my own body. In my first life, Oren had died gasping in my arms, while Seraphine screamed for help. I had spent years blaming myself for failing to recognize the poison. Now I saw the silver cup in his hand. The same cup. A servant approached with mulled wine. Oren lifted it toward his lips. I moved without words. My elbow struck his wrist. Wine splashed across the black chest, and the silver cup rang against the floor. The ballroom froze. I made myself look horrified. Your Highness, forgive me. Oren stared at the stain on his coat. Were you attempting to assassinate my dignity? Laughter flickered uneasily around us. The servant bent for the cup. Leave it, I said. Seraphine's gaze snapped to mine. Why? The question did not enter my ears. It traveled through the moonstone bond like cold breath. On our wedding night, the bond was weak enough that she could send only emotion and single words. I thought, bad luck to clean a spilled wedding cup before dawn. It was a superstition my grandmother truly believed. Seraphine found it in my memory and relaxed. I smiled at Oren. At least let me replace the wine. Mara, would you inspect the cup? Captain Maravale stood behind the prince. She had been his shield since childhood and had died beside him in my first life. Suspicion was her natural language. She lifted the cup with a handkerchief. Seraphine heard my surface thought change. Please let me survive my wedding night. She mistook my fear for embarrassment. The cup contained moonbane. The poisoner vanished before Mara's soldiers reached the kitchens, but Prince Oren survived. The black chest remained unopened, sealed in the Imperial Vault pending investigation. By dawn, the future had taken its first different breath. Seraphine waited until we were alone to ask how I knew. Our wedding chamber glowed with candles and expectation. She stood before the mirror, removing pearl pins from her hair. Each one clicked softly onto the table. In the first life, I had been too nervous to look directly at her. She had teased me, pulled me close, and kissed me until every guarded thought became loud. Now she let one silk strap fall from her shoulder and watched my reflection. Desire was not difficult to feel. That made it dangerous. She was still the woman I had loved. Rebirth had not erased the part of me that remembered the warmth of her sleeping against my chest, or the way she sang when she believed no one listened. My body recognized her before my hatred could intervene. Her moonstone brightened. I allowed one honest thought to surface. You are unfairly beautiful. You knocked away Oren's cup before anyone mentioned poison, she said. I stumbled. You never stumble. You have known me for 4 months. I know you better than people who have known you for 20 years. She crossed the room barefoot. Her fingertips traced the gold embroidery on my collar, then slipped beneath it. What are you hiding from me, Cassian? I remembered the blade. I did not name it. I pictured rain running down iron. I heard bells in reverse. I tasted blood. None of it became language. Seraphine flinched. What was that? So she could feel the shape of silence even when she could not enter it. I covered the gap with the truest shame available. I am afraid I will not be enough for you. Her expression softened at once. She kissed me, slow and warm. A performance so convincing that for one aching instant I wanted to live inside it. I held her waist. I let attraction move through me. But when tenderness tried to follow, I locked it behind the sound of backward bells. She drew away first. You are enough, she whispered. The woman who would kill me sounded almost offended that I doubted her. We shared the bed, but not the night she expected. I blamed the poison investigation and said I wanted our first time to belong only to us, not to fear. Seraphine accepted that because she heard how badly I wanted her and mistook restraint for devotion. When her breathing deepened, I slipped from the bed and wrote 3 names on a piece of paper without speaking them in my mind. Prince Oren, Captain Maravale, Lyra Finn. The first 2 could keep the kingdom standing. The third could teach me how to become unreadable. Lyra worked beneath the palace in the archive of forbidden tongues, where inconvenient histories were sent to become dust. In my first life, I met her only once. She was a junior translator, accused of altering a treaty. At her trial, she had refused to defend herself aloud. Seraphine read her silence as guilt, and I signed the order that sent her to a labor camp. Years later, while searching rebel records, I discovered Lyra had been innocent. She communicated in hand signs with her deaf younger brother, and thought more readily in movement than words. Seraphine had been unable to read her and destroyed her because of it. I found Lyra before sunrise, standing on a ladder with a knife between her teeth. She was cutting a band map from the ceiling. Most archivists use scissors, I said. She nearly fell. The knife landed beside my boot. Lyra climbed down slowly. Her copper hair had been pinned up with 2 black quills, and ink marked one cheek. She glanced at my wedding coat, then at the knife. If I scream, she said, will the new royal son-in-law pretend he came here to read? If you scream, my wife may hear you thinking about the map. All humor left her face. I picked up the knife and offered it handle first. I need you to teach me your brother's language. Why? I pointed at my head. Lyra studied me for a long time. Princess Seraphine reads minds. It was not a question. Yes. And you married her anyway. Yesterday I would have called that romantic. What do you call it today? I looked at the hidden map above us. A war. Lyra should have refused. Instead, she asked me to close my eyes. Her fingers touched mine and arranged them into a shape. This means danger, she said. She changed the angle of my wrist. This means listen. Then she pressed 2 fingers against my palm. This means lie. I opened my eyes. I thought sign language was honest. Only to people who bother learning it. That was the beginning of my second life. By day, I played Seraphine's adoring husband. I attended councils, accepted compliments, and made my thoughts as pleasantly predictable as a hymn. I admired her intelligence. I worried about my new rank. I resented nobles who mocked my provincial family. Every thought was genuine, carefully selected, and entirely useless. By night, Lyra taught me to think with my hands. We began with objects: apple, key, knife, door, then actions: follow, hide, wait, betray. She struck my wrist whenever I silently named a sign instead of seeing it. Words are a habit, she told me. Break the habit. My wife lives inside that habit. Then stop decorating her house. Lyra had no patience for rank. I liked her immediately, and trusted her not at all. Our first target was Chancellor Vey. In my first life, Vey had become Seraphine's closest advisor after Oren's death. He built the Ashencourt's bribery network, then supposedly died by my hand. I now suspected Seraphine had killed him after he outlived his usefulness. The future Vey was already purchasing abandoned granaries through false names. Grain seemed harmless in summer. By winter, controlling it meant controlling hunger. I could not accuse him using knowledge from a future that no longer existed. I needed evidence, and Seraphine would hear any plan I described to myself. So Lyra and I built a plan that existed only as a dance. At breakfast, I let Seraphine hear my excitement about repairing the 7th Banner, a regiment of injured veterans and discarded troublemakers. She heard wounded ambition. She never heard the pattern created when I assigned loyal soldiers to night drills around Vey's warehouses. 3 weeks after our wedding, they caught men moving imperial grain into his private stores. Vey called it a clerical mistake. I requested an audit, and Seraphine supported me because my desire for one clean victory was entirely real. That night, Lyra intercepted Vey's warning to the Ashen Court. The princess has lost control of him. I signed, not yet. Lyra corrected my thumb. That means goat. Her quick smile was the first thing in my new life that belonged only to itself. Seraphine's response came 2 nights later. She invited my younger brother Rowan to dinner. Rowan was 19, loud, loyal, and incapable of hiding a thought from anyone even without magic. In my first life, Seraphine had befriended him. Later, letters bearing his seal connected me to the Ashen Court. He died in prison, insisting he had signed nothing. At dinner, he talked about horses, dueling, and a singer he adored. Seraphine laughed at every reckless thought. I could feel her gift moving around the table like a cold draft. Then she asked, Rowan, where does your brother keep his private seal? He paused. The answer formed in his mind before suspicion could stop it. Seraphine heard. I knocked over my wine. Everyone looked at me. Under the table, I signed danger to Rowan, a sign Lyra had taught him that morning under the excuse of military signaling. Rowan's face barely changed. For once, my foolish little brother understood. He thought deliberately. In the blue cabinet beside Cassian's bed, Seraphine's moonstone flashed. The seal was actually sewn into Rowan's left boot. She had heard a lie. After dinner, she searched the cabinet and found nothing. She returned to our chamber smiling, but blood traced one nostril. You trained him, she said. I looked up from a military report. In table manners? Clearly not. His thought was false. People lie. Sarah. Not inside their own minds. I felt the danger of the moment settle between. If I defended Rowan too quickly, she would know I understood her power. If I showed no concern, she would hear the lie in my emotions, so I gave her anger. Did you ask my brother about my seal because you wished to surprise me with new stationery? She watched me. I let old humiliation surface. Every time a noble had called me a farmer's son, every time I had feared Seraphine regretted marrying below her rank, the feelings were real enough to burn. You are reading my family at my own table, I said. Do you know what that makes me feel like? Her power recoiled from the storm she had uncovered. Seraphine could detect a false thought because the mind resisted it. She had not anticipated that Rowan had spent all afternoon imagining the blue cabinet, opening it, touching the seal, and closing it again, until the invented memory felt worn smooth. Lyra called the technique a painted room. If the lie had walls, weight, smell, and history, Seraphine could walk through it without noticing there was no foundation. I was protecting you, Seraphine said. From my brother? From anyone who might use him. I looked away, because tenderness was easier to imitate when she could see only my profile. She came behind me and wrapped her arms around my shoulders. Her cheek rested against my hair. I am sorry, she whispered. In my first life, I had waited years to hear those words. Now they frightened me more than any threat. Her apologies were not surrender. They were probes wrapped in warmth. I covered her hands with mine and thought, I want to believe you. She kissed my temple. Then believe me. I did not answer aloud. The next morning, Rowan's boot exploded. Not with flame. With blue dye. He had entered the palace armory when a vial hidden in the heel shattered, staining his leg and the floor. Guards found my private seal inside the ruined boot. They also found a forged order transferring 200 swords to a rebel province. Seraphine had known the seal was there. She had searched the cabinet only to make us believe our painted room worked. By noon, Rowan was in chains. By sunset, half the court believed my family was arming rebels. Seraphine entered our chamber wearing the face of a worried wife. I can save him. I stood at the window. Below us, Rowan was being marched toward the prison tower. In my first life, this was where I had broken. I had begged Seraphine for help. In exchange, I gave her access to the Seventh Banner's cipher network. She used it for 7 years to send orders in my name. What do you need? I asked. Her gift opened eagerly. I filled my mind with terror. It required no acting. Rowan had died once because of me, and history had reached for him again. The cipher key, Seraphine said. If I can inspect your military messages, I can prove the transfer order is false. I turned. Of course. Surprise flickered in her eyes. I crossed the room, unlocked my desk, and gave her a brass cylinder. The key inside was genuine. She searched my thoughts. I let her find gratitude, fear, and desperate hope, all true. What she did not know was that the Seventh Banner had changed ciphers that morning. The brass key opened a network we had built for her. For the next month, Seraphine read messages about patrol routes, supply shortages, and my increasing resentment toward Prince Oren. Every message was accurate. Every conclusion they encouraged was false. Meanwhile, Lyra entered the prison dressed as a temple interpreter. She found the guard who had planted the forged order and showed him a sign used by the Ashen Court. 3 fingers crossing the throat. The guard attacked her. Mara caught him in the act. Rowan was released, but I learned a lesson that cost him 3 broken ribs. Seraphine did not merely listen to thoughts. She listened to the confidence people placed in their defenses. The moment we believed we had become invisible, she found the shadow we cast. After Rowan returned home, I found Lyra on the snowy archive roof, bandaging the hand a prison guard had cut. I cleaned the wound with wine while she complained that archivists disliked liquids near anything valuable. Her fingers were cold in mine. Her silence felt spacious rather than empty. She told me Seraphine had executed her father for refusing to certify the forged Norwin Treaty. In my first life, that treaty had caused a war, and I had burned Lyra's mother's village. Are you saving the kingdom? She asked. Or punishing your wife? Both. Which matters more? At that moment, revenge did. I hated myself enough to admit it. Lyra pulled her hand away. Then one day you may decide the kingdom is an acceptable weapon. When you do, I will stop you. Even if it kills you? Especially then. It should have sounded like a threat. Instead, it was the first promise in years that made me feel safe. Winter tightened around Aurelis. Chancellor Vey's stolen grain was returned to the public stores, but he survived the scandal by sacrificing 3 merchants and claiming he had been deceived. Seraphine defended him in council with such precise reluctance that even Oren believed she disliked the man. I knew better. She was keeping him close enough to kill later. The black wedding chest remained in the Imperial Vault. Its lock could be opened only by Seraphine's moonstone and a second key supposedly buried with her mother. Lyra found records proving the queen's tomb had been opened twice in 6 years. Both entries were signed by a physician named Elian Sorel. In my first life, Sorel had treated Oren's poisoned fever. He had also declared Chancellor Vey dead. We followed Sorel to a bathhouse in the Eastern Quarter. Lyra disguised herself as a servant, a choice that made my thoughts loud enough for her to tease me even without magic. 3 knives hidden beneath her skirt proved the disguise was practical. Behind a carved screen, we heard him offer Vey a glass vial. The prince survived once, Sorel whispered. The queen will not risk the same method. The queen risks nothing. That is what husbands are for. My hand closed around the screen. Lyra touched 2 fingers to my wrist. Wait. Sorel gave Vey a glass vial. This does not kill. It opens the mind. 1 dose in Lord Cassian's wine, and she can read memories as easily as thoughts. Seraphine had found a way into my silent lair. Vey tucked away the vial. At the founding ball? Before. Her patience is exhausted. We let them leave. Lyra shoved me against the tiled wall and demanded whether I intended to drink it. I intend to make her believe I did. That is what men say shortly before someone carries them home. I caught her wrist. We stood too close, anger and steam between us. I need her to enter one memory, I said. Which one? My execution. Lyra stopped fighting my grip. You remember dying, she said. I nodded. And every morning, you wake beside the woman who killed you. Yes. Her fingers rose to the faint scar circling my neck. No scar had existed until my rebirth, but in cold weather a pale line appeared where the sword had passed in another life. You should have told me. If I gave it words, Seraphine could hear. Not here. Not with me. I leaned my forehead against hers. We did not kiss. The space between us felt more intimate than the bed I shared with my wife. No more dying alone, Lyra whispered. It was not a declaration of love. It was better. It was a condition. We replaced Sorel's vial with a sleeping tincture and followed Vey's messenger. The trail led not to Seraphine's rooms, but to Emperor Aldrin's private chapel. My assumptions shifted. The Emperor had always seemed weak in my first life, a grieving widower who allowed his daughter to speak for him, then died peacefully 2 years before my execution. I had never questioned the convenience of his decline. Inside the chapel, Vey knelt before the old man. Your daughter is losing control, he said. Seraphine has never controlled anything, Aldrin replied. She observes. I decide. Lyra's hand found mine in the darkness. The Emperor had ordered the poison, the forged treaty, and the grain theft. Seraphine was not the architect of the Ashen Court. She was its perfect instrument. For one foolish instant, relief cut through me. If Aldrin had shaped her, perhaps some part of the woman I loved had been real. Then Vey asked, and Cassian? The emperor answered, "My daughter chose him because honest men are easy to frame. Let her enjoy the choice until we need his corpse." Seraphine knew. Relief became ash. That night, I brought Seraphine honeycakes from the bakery where we had first kissed. She sat cross-legged on our bed, fed me one with her fingers, and asked about the scar around my neck. "Old training wound. You are lying." I placed her hand over my heart. "Read me." I remembered rain on the bakery windows, sugar on her mouth, and my certainty that no future could frighten me if she stood inside it. The memory had happened exactly that way. Seraphine's eyes softened. "You loved me before I ever touched you." "Yes. Do you still?" I loved the girl in the bakery, hated the queen above the scaffold, pitied the daughter turned into a weapon, and feared the wife searching for my memories. "More than I know how to survive," I said. Seraphine kissed me. This time, grief made me kiss her back. For several breathless moments, we were husband and wife instead of enemies measuring each other's wounds. "No more secrets," she murmured. "No more," I agreed. She heard the promise I had once meant. 3 days later, she poured the false memory drug into my wine. We were alone in the moon garden, celebrating 6 months of marriage. White flowers opened beneath the winter glass. Musicians played beyond the hedges, while servants kept their distance. Seraphine lifted her glass. To trust. I drank. The sleeping tincture took effect almost immediately. I let the cup fall and caught the table as if fighting dizziness. Seraphine came around it. "Cassian?" Concern entered her voice too quickly to be entirely false. I collapsed against her. The moonstone at her throat touched my brow. Cold light flooded the garden. She entered the memory I had prepared. Not the scaffold. Not yet. I showed her a painted room built over 7 weeks, Prince Oren offering me the crown, in exchange for testimony against the emperor. Mara, promising the 7th banner's support. Lyra opening the imperial vault with a stolen key. Every image contained real places, real voices, and real desires. Oren truly wanted reform. Mara truly distrusted Aldrin. I truly wanted Seraphine free from her father. Only the conversation had never occurred. She tore herself from my mind with a gasp. "Traitor," she whispered. I remained limp in her arms. My wife looked down at me, and a tear fell onto my cheek. "Why couldn't you just love me?" Then she called for help. Within an hour, Oren was arrested for conspiracy. Mara escaped because Lyra's silent signal reached her first. The Emperor ordered the 7th banner disbanded. Seraphine sat beside my bed and held my hand until I woke. "Someone drugged you," she told me. "Who?" "Oren. He planned to use you against my father." Her lie was flawless because she believed its purpose. Protect the throne. Protect me. Protect the version of us in which I remained grateful. I stared at her in horror, and let her hear my faith collapse exactly as she expected. I trusted him. I know. "What happens now?" Seraphine brushed my hair from my forehead. "You helped me prove his guilt. That was how I entered the Ashen Court." She gave me a black ring and led me beneath the imperial chapel, where Aldrin, Vey, 12 nobles, and 3 generals waited around a stone table. The emperor welcomed me as if I had passed an examination. "Loyalty is not the absence of doubt," he said. "It is choosing correctly after doubt." I knelt and kissed his ring. I thought, I will earn your trust. He did not know I meant to use it as a weapon. For the next year, I served the Ashen Court, strengthening it long enough to enter its center. Beside Seraphine, I became half of the feared perfect pair. The queen who heard deceit, and the husband who designed punishment. Oren waited under house arrest. Mara gathered loyal soldiers. Rowan recruited traveling actors. And Lyra turned our messages into music. Soon information crossed Aurelis in melodies no mind reader thought to fear. Seraphine noticed I had stopped visiting the archive. "You miss her," she said one night. "Who?" "Lyra Fenn." I could have denied it. Instead, I thought of Lyra's ink-stained cheek, her knives, and the warmth of her forehead against mine. Seraphine heard enough to step away. "Have you touched her?" "No." "Have you wanted to?" "Yes." She slapped me. Seraphine's anger cracked almost immediately. "Cassian, you asked. I heard you love her. You heard no such thought. I heard the way your mind changes around her. She was not manipulating me. Her gift had taught her to distrust promises and worship passing thoughts. She demanded permanence from the least permanent part of a person." "Sarah," I said, "you cannot search a mind until you find the answer that hurts you, then call the pain truth. Do you love her?" I did not answer. Her moonstone flared. She pushed into me hard enough to make my vision whiten. I felt her moving through my surface memories, opening doors, overturning moments. I held the silent layer closed with backward bells. Blood ran from her nose. "Let me in," she begged. "No." She released me. "A husband should have no locked rooms. Then a wife should knock." Seraphine left the balcony. The next morning, Lyra disappeared. Her room stood empty. Seraphine discussed weather while I imagined every prison beneath the palace, but could not think Lyra's name. For 6 days, there was no sign. On the 7th, a violinist played our danger melody outside the council chamber. One note was wrong. Reversed, the melody pointed to the abandoned royal theater. I went there after midnight under the excuse of meeting Vey. Lyra sat alone on the stage beneath a single lamp. "It is a trap," she signed. I signed back. "I know." Seraphine stepped from the royal box above us. "Then why did you come?" she asked. I looked up. My wife wore black and held a knife against Rowan's throat. "Choose," Seraphine said. Your brother, or the woman you claim you have never touched. I walked onto the stage and kissed Lyra. Shock made Lyra rigid. Then she understood and kissed me back with 2 years of restraint breaking at once. Above us, Seraphine made a sound like something tearing. Lyra, I said, tell the queen what you stole. Lyra smiled breathlessly. Nothing. Mara's soldiers flooded the theater. Rowan dropped flat. The knife was wax, his ropes designed to break. Seraphine had tested whether Lyra and I shared a hidden language. We had tested whether jealousy would make her act without her father's approval. Emperor Aldrin entered behind the soldiers. Seraphine's face emptied. Father, you endangered a member of House Rook over a romantic suspicion, he said. You moved royal guards without authorization. You exposed our listening routes. Unable to punish her publicly without exposing the Ashen Court, Aldrin removed the moonstone from her throat. Until you remember discipline, he said, you will hear no one. For the first time since we met, my mind was closed to her. I expected satisfaction and felt only grief. That night, she came to our chamber without servants. She had removed her jewels and royal paint. A red mark circled her throat where the moonstone had rested since childhood. Was any of it real? She asked. I sat beside the cold fireplace. Which part? The bakery, the honey cakes, the way you held me when I woke from nightmares. Yes, the kiss tonight? Also real. She closed her eyes. I could forgive a lie. I don't know how to forgive two truths. You don't need to. Did you marry me for my father? No. For the throne? No. Then why do you look at me like a grave? I could have continued the game. Without her stone, she was vulnerable. A gentle answer would restore her dependence on me. Instead, I told her part of the truth. Because loving you has already killed something in me. Seraphine sat across from me. I was 9 when father discovered my gift. He made me read prisoners and punish their children when I refused. By 15, I could make men confess to thoughts they had never acted on. Father called that strength. And what do you call it? Survival. Oren's poison? Her gaze fell. Survival. The treaty? Lyra's father? Rowan? Me? Survival, she repeated, but the word broke. I knelt before her. You survived so long that you made everyone else pay the price. Tears slipped down her face, without changing her expression. If I help you destroy him, she whispered, can we begin again? For one dangerous second, I imagined saying yes. Then I remembered how she had wept, and framed an innocent man, in the same breath. Give me the second key to your mother's chest, I said. Her face hardened. That is not an answer. It is the only answer I have. She stood. Then you have chosen her. This is not about Lyra. It was always about the person whose silence you preferred to my voice. She left without giving me the key. By dawn, she had reconciled with her father. Within a year, Aldrin returned her moonstone, banished Oren, declared Mara a deserter, and restored my command. We had won access and lost time. The border war began that spring. Norwin attacked after Aldrin enforced the forged treaty. In my first life, I had called the war unavoidable. Now I knew it justified his emergency rule. The Emperor ordered me to lead the 7th Banner north. Seraphine fastened my armor herself. Our marriage had become exquisitely polite. Lyra will travel with the medical corps, she said. I controlled my breath. Why would an archivist do that? Because you will protect her. And while you protect her, you will obey me. It is the closest thing I have left to a wedding vow. At the front, Aldrin ordered us to burn 3 villages. In my first life, I obeyed. This time, we evacuated the civilians through tunnels on Lyra's map and burned empty barns to create the smoke he expected. Norwin's commander, General Sava, met me beneath a flag of truce. Sava brought Lyra's father's original treaty. I brought Aldrin's altered copy. Together, we staged battles on empty fields and filled casualty lists with people secretly sent south. Seraphine heard real exhaustion and fear in every report. For 18 months, we built an army of ghosts. Then Vey discovered one village still standing. He arrived with Imperial guards and seized Lyra from the medical camp. I found them in a ruined chapel, Vey holding Sorrel's last vial against her mouth. The queen wants your memories, he said. She believes you survived something you should not remember. Lyra's lip was bleeding. Her eyes found mine. No more dying alone. Vey poured the drug between her lips. I crossed the chapel before he lowered the bottle. The fight lasted seconds. I broke his wrist, struck his throat, and drove him against the altar. My sword stopped over his heart. In my first life, Chancellor Vey had begged me for mercy before Seraphine killed him and framed me. Now he laughed. Do it, he rasped. Give her the corpse she remembers. The words froze my blade. He knew. How? Queen Helena's chest does not contain jewels. It contains lives. Seraphine's mother had been a memory weaver. The black chest held her experiments, records of souls returning, minds carrying impressions across death, crowns designed to reach backward through blood. Seraphine had not chosen me because I was honest. She had chosen me because her mother had predicted I would return. Vey smiled at my shock. Your wife has been waiting for your rebirth since before your first wedding. Lyra collapsed. I let Vey live and carried her to the surgeons. For 3 days, the drug dragged Lyra through childhood, her father's execution, and echoes of the other life leaking from my memories. On the 4th night, she woke and asked, Did you love her when she killed you? Yes. Do you love her now? I sat beside her cot, unable to hide behind silence anymore. Some part of me always will. Lyra nodded as if I had confirmed a wound. And you? I asked. You do not get to choose me, as proof that you escaped her. If this ends, and you still don't know who you are without revenge, I will leave. I know. Her hand emerged from the blankets. She signed one word. Stay. I took her hand and stayed beside her. Vei's revelation changed our plan. The chest could prove rebirth, but it might also give Seraphine power beyond surface thoughts. We needed to open it before the founding jubilee, when Aldrin planned to crown her queen and eliminate Orin permanently. The second key was not buried with her mother. It was Seraphine. Lyra found the answer in an anatomical sketch hidden inside Queen Helena's prayer book. The key had been carved from moonstone and placed beneath Seraphine's skin when she was a child. The red line around her throat was not caused by a necklace. It was a surgical scar. To open the chest, Seraphine had to bleed willingly onto the lock. We could not steal that. We had to make her choose. I returned 6 weeks before the jubilee. Seraphine waited at the palace gate in the same silver color she would wear at my execution. She embraced me before the crowd. What did Vei tell you? She whispered. I held her tightly enough to look loving. That you expected me to come back. For the first time, I said the forbidden truth in words. Her moonstone blazed. The crowd disappeared. Seraphine entered the silent lair. She saw the rain, the sword, her smile, Rowan dead, and Orin poisoned. Then she saw our second wedding and realized I had known from the first dance. She tore away from me, staggering. You remembered. Every moment. All these years, I thought I was reading you. You were reading what I survived by giving you. Her hand rose to her throat. My mother said you would return only if the kingdom fell. The kingdom did fall. You were standing on its bones. Come home, she said. That night, she locked us inside the moon garden. She left her guards and moonstone outside. If you knew what I would do, she asked, why did you not kill me at our wedding? Because I would have become a murderer no one believed while your father still ruled. That is the noble answer. Because I wanted you to know you lost. She accepted the uglier truth with a small nod. Better. I placed the black chest's location record beside her necklace. Open it with me. So you can destroy my father? So we can prove what he made you do. You think that saves me? No. It saves his next victims. Seraphine circled the table. And after, Orin takes the throne. Lyra takes my husband. I take a cell. Afterward, you face what you chose. You still believe choices are clean things. How fortunate for you. I strengthened the Ashen Court, left Orin imprisoned, and used your love and Lyra's trust. I am prepared to answer for it. She stopped before me. Would Lyra forgive you if she knew you kissed me after your rebirth? She does know. Would she forgive you if she knew part of you wanted to stay? She knows that too. Seraphine looked almost angry at a form of intimacy her gift could not create. What does she have that I do not? She lets an answer belong to me before I give it. My wife stared at the empty air between us. At last, she removed a jeweled pin and cut the scar at her throat. One condition, she said. When father falls, you do not kill him. He lives long enough to inhabit a mind no one fears. Agreed. Her blood opened the chest. Inside, Queen Helena's journals described a crown that could magnify Seraphine's gift across the capital. Aldrin planned to identify every citizen thinking of resistance. But the crown had a flaw. A frequency hidden inside the old city bells could reverse the connection, broadcasting Seraphine's selected memories into every mind touching the network. That was why the bells had rung backward before my second execution. We had our weapon. We did not have Seraphine's loyalty. The night before the Jubilee, she stole the journals and delivered me to her father. I woke in the prison beneath Crown Square, with iron around my wrists. Emperor Aldrin stood outside the bars. My daughter says you corrupted her with fantasies of another life. She is very persuasive. She is afraid of you. That is far more useful than love. He showed me confessions, naming me leader of the Ashen Court, Lyra's arrest order, and Orin's execution decree. History had returned to the scaffold, only faster. At dawn, Mara's tunnel collapsed, Rowan's couriers vanished, and Lyra was seized with the tuning fork. Every signal seemed exposed. Seraphine came to my cell wearing silver mourning silk. You told him everything, I said. I saw the bells, ravens, and soldiers inside your rebirth memory. Then why wait? I needed father to believe I chose him. Hope moved, and she heard it. Seraphine smiled sadly. You still misunderstand. I did choose him. Why? Because you offered me judgment and called it freedom. Father offered me power and called it what it was. She touched my face through the bars. At the scaffold, think of surrender. If you resist, he will kill Rowan first. And Lyra? Pain flickered across her face. She will live if you make me believe you have released her from the plan. I closed my eyes. I understand. By noon, rain covered Crown Square. Seraphine wore the crown above 10,000 citizens. Aldrin sat behind her. Orin and Rowan knelt in chains. Lyra stood among the court musicians with a violin beneath her chin. The executioner raised his sword. Seraphine listened to my surrender. The executioner's sword began to fall. Lyra drew her bow over one silent string. Every bell in Orlis rang backward. Mara caught the sword. Soldiers turned. Paper ravens flooded the square. My wife stared at me through the cracking crown. This time, you lose knowing why. This time? She whispered. The crown opened her mind to mine, and I showed her there had never been one plan. Knowing she would see the bells, I built a plan designed to be betrayed. Mara's tunnel was supposed to collapse, Rowan carried blanks, and Lyra's tuning fork was glass. The true frequency lived in the violin melody Lyra had played for years. Thousands of citizens knew it as a children's song. Hundreds of street musicians began playing at the same moment, and the bells answered. The ravens carried orders Seraphine had written while infiltrating her father's court. She believed they condemned her. Misplaced letters in those orders reproduced Aldrin's payments, poison requests, and treaty amendments. She had created evidence, while believing she proved loyalty. She had betrayed her father before she chose him. Years earlier, when she asked whether we could begin again, my voice requested the key, while my hidden hand signed yes. She had seen the sign reflected in the glass wall. She had never acknowledged it. Neither had I. Our final plan lived in that one unanswered gesture. Seraphine turned toward the throne. Emperor Aldrin stood with a knife at Orin's throat. "Take off the crown," he ordered. The network carried his thought into every mind in the square. She was born to be a door. Doors do not choose where they open. Seraphine heard it with everyone else. She had believed her father considered her dangerous and precious. He considered her furniture. She stepped down from the royal platform. "Sarah," Aldrin warned. She removed the crown, then she placed it on his head. The bells rang again. Aldrin screamed as 10,000 minds entered his at once. Not words alone. Hunger from the grain winter. Fire from the northern villages. Children watching parents dragged away because of thoughts, Seraphine reported. Every private wound his reign had created flooded the man who had never listened to anyone. He collapsed without dying. Seraphine had kept her condition. He would live inside a mind no one feared. Vey tried to escape through the crowd. Rowan tripped him with his chains. Orin took the knife from Aldrin and ordered the royal guard to stand down. The square did not celebrate. People demanded Seraphine's death. Families demanded names. Nobles burned papers, and soldiers chose sides. Revolutions were not endings. They were doors, and unlike Aldrin, we would have to choose where they opened. Orin formed a tribunal where no thought or magical memory could stand without evidence. The true treaty was restored, and the seventh banner became answerable to Parliament. I confessed to enforcing illegal taxes, concealing military movements, and strengthening the Ashen Court. The tribunal stripped my titles, lands, and command. For the first time, losing power felt like freedom. Vey received life. Aldrin lived in a hospital, unable to separate his thoughts from the echoes he had forced upon Seraphine. My wife's trial lasted 43 days. She admitted every act. She offered no childhood as absolution. When asked why she had helped expose Aldrin, she said, "Because being made into a weapon explains the blood. It does not wash it away." Her evidence had prevented a purge, so the tribunal stripped her name, crown, and gift, then sentenced her to rebuild the northern villages for 20 years. I visited her before she left. She wore a plain gray dress. Without jewels, she looked younger than the woman in my wedding memories, and older than the queen at the scaffold. "I cannot hear you," she said. "I know. It is peaceful." Then someone smiles, and I have no idea whether they mean it. That is what trust feels like. It is horrible. I laughed despite myself. So did she. For a moment, the bakery returned. Rain, sugar, and two young people who believed love made them safe. "Did you forgive me?" she asked. I thought of the scaffold. I thought of Rowan's ribs, Lyra's fever, Orin's poisoned cup, and Seraphine cutting her own throat to open the chest. "Forgiveness is not the same as returning," I said. "I know. I forgive the girl who survived. I will never excuse the queen she chose to become." Tears brightened her eyes, but she smiled. "That is annoyingly fair. Lyra has had a terrible influence on me. Does she love you? You will have to ask her." Seraphine looked offended. Then she understood the gift inside the uncertainty. "Goodbye, Cassian." "Goodbye, Sarah." I left without looking back. Lyra waited on the prison steps with 2 travel bags and a violin case. "You packed for me?" I asked. "No. The second bag contains books. You may carry it." "Where are we going?" "North. The villages need schools, the archives need truthful copies, and you need to learn a profession that does not involve being executed. I have military experience, exactly my concern." We walked through a capital still removing the queen's banners. No crowd cheered us. No title waited at the gate. For the first time in either life, I had no plan beyond the road. It frightened me. Lyra slipped her hand into mine. "Your thoughts are loud," she said. "You cannot read minds. Your ears are red." I stopped beneath the city bells. "I love you." She studied me long enough that the old fear returned. I could not search her silence. I could not choose her answer or prepare for it. I could only stand there, unguarded. Lyra touched 2 fingers to my palm, the first sign she had ever taught me. Danger. Then she kissed me, smiling against my mouth. "Good," she whispered. "You are finally learning." People later told of the mind-reading queen who saw every betrayal except the one hidden inside her husband's rebirth. They made me cleverer and Seraphine crueler. Stories prefer clean heroes and monsters. The truth was that I defeated her because I had loved her enough to know the limits of her gift, and she defeated her father because some part of her had loved me enough to learn a language she could not hear. In the north, Lyra and I built a school beside the river. Rowan taught writing badly. Mara taught history with military precision. Orin visited without a crown, and complained that Parliament argued about everything. Seraphine rebuilt houses in a village whose names she once signed away. We did not become friends. We became people capable of passing on the same road without demanding the past change direction. On the 7th anniversary of my second life, Lyra found me watching rain slide down the school windows. "Where are you?" she asked. Once, that question would have terrified me. I could have answered with the scaffold, the ballroom, or the garden. All of them still lived inside me. Rebirth had not erased the man who died. Revenge had not healed him. Love had not rescued him without his consent. But Lyra was waiting, not listening for anything I did not choose to give. I took her hand and placed it over my heart. "Here," I said. Outside, the bells began to ring. "Forward this time."